So firstly, Dave's kind of covered that one actually. Thanks for that. Um, but a second little task I was going to ask of people is, if you don't mind, in the chat, could you post a number between 1 and 10 for how confident you feel supporting somebody with pet bereavement, if you feel comfortable doing so. And then at the end, I'm going to ask you to choose a number after the session, and we can see any difference. Next slide, please. So my little introduction here. The picture on the right is my little Gracie. My sort of experience in comms and marketing started as an influencer. So I have a mental health blog, if people aren't too sure or haven't heard of it. It's called I'm Not Disordered. And it's now on 3.2 million readers. It's doing very well. And off the back of that, I found a sense of purpose in comms and marketing. So I had a rabbit called Gracie. She was my youngest rabbit at the time of her death. Somebody said, "What's the question?" I asked if people could put a number between 1 and 10 for how confident you feel supporting somebody with pet bereavement, if that helps, whoever just asked. So Gracie, I had Gracie around 2 years. She would have been 3 in January. And if people don't know, a normal lifespan for a domestic rabbit is 10 to 12 years. So she was very young when she passed away. There was symptoms of gut stasis for around 2 days, but it was a symptom where I couldn't pinpoint which rabbit was actually poorly. And gut stasis, if people don't know, rabbits have a different digestive system to anybody else. They digest their food twice. And gut stasis is something that's quite common in rabbits, and it can be fatal within 24 to 48 hours of not having treatment from the first symptom presentation. So because for 2 days I didn't know which rabbit was actually really poorly, it wasn't until it was sort of too late that I could try and get Gracie any help. Being prey animals, rabbits try not to show when they're poorly or injured because they feel that makes them vulnerable. Even though they're domesticated, they still have that instinct. So it was on Halloween, the 31st of October last year. She wasn't responding to her name. She wasn't eating. She was sitting hunched up, which is another sign of gut stasis because they are in a lot of pain with their abdomen. So they sit sort of hunched up for like the discomfort. I rang the vets that day and asked to bring her in straight away, and was told by a receptionist, she'll be fine overnight, we'll see her in the morning. And in the early hours of the morning, she passed away. I obviously didn't find her until I had to get up for the appointment. And she was just lying in the sitting room on the floor in the doorway. I actually nearly stood on her because I wasn't expecting her to be there. My eldest rabbit, who was bonded with her, was trying to nudge her body to wake her up, and it was really heartbreaking. And it wasn't until my mum sort of said that was a bit of a trauma for me, because it massively impacted my mental health finding her. The ultimate cause of death, the position she was in, the vet thinks she had a heart attack, which gut stasis can cause. Typically, if a rabbit dies from gut stasis, they tend to sort of die hunched up and like asleep. The way I found her, it was as if she was mid-hop and just keeled over. So they think it was a heart attack, which I try and hold on to the fact that would have meant it was quick and painless. I also try and hold on to the fact that at least she was in her own home and she had people and pets that love her all around her. She wasn't pumped full of drugs. And so after my mum sort of used the word trauma, I looked into creating Gracie's Way. I had an event in November with the trustees of Waythrough, and we visited a service in Leeds, and they talked about their work around bereavement, and there was nothing mentioned around pet bereavement. So on the train ride home, I found myself using AI to figure out to brainstorm some names for Gracie's Way, and created a logo that day. So the project, what does it do? The main premises of Gracie's Way is that there are a number of resources available on the website. Gracie's Way is the only pet bereavement project that caters to bereaved owners and professionals. So there's around 7 resources for bereaved owners and around 5 or 6 for professionals. And by professionals is meant veterinary staff, mental health staff, and organisations, adoption centres, just anybody that would come into contact with somebody or support somebody who's gone through a pet bereavement. And it's found that niche because there is no other organisations out there that do that. It also offers pet bereavement training for professionals, which is something I'm in discussions with Waythrough about. So you might say the name again, Gracie's Way. Current statistics. Gracie's Way has 231 followers on Instagram, 38,000 views on the website, and over 600 requests for resources. So the way somebody can receive one of the resources is by emailing Gracie's Way, which I think the contact details will be at the end. And you just request, and it's absolutely free. You receive the PDF in your email inbox, and work through it in your own time. There's sort of activities and exercises in some of the resources that make it quite engaging. So over 600 resources, and all those statistics are from launching the project on the 9th of January, which would have been Gracie's 3rd birthday. I chose to launch it that day. So I think those statistics are like really positive and really productive considering how little time it's been going. Next slide, please. Why pet bereavement matters. So there are a lot of aspects to owning a pet that can be incredibly vital and important to your mental health and emotional well-being. Unconditional love and acceptance, constant companionship, emotional support, stress relief. So stress relief. I had a rabbit. My first rabbit was actually a therapy pet for the children's oncology ward at one of my local hospitals. And there was actually an instance where there was a child who had learning difficulties and they were very overstimulated and they were having a meltdown. And I don't know how the doctor thought of this, but he got his stethoscope and he put the the end that would go on your chest, he put that on the rabbit's chest and give the ear end to the child. And hearing the rabbit's heartbeat really sort of brought them to a more even kilter and sort of calmed them down and was a stress relief for them. So it does go beyond the owner benefiting from having a rabbit or any kind of pet. Sense of purpose and identity, family bond, shared history. So another aspect for why my pets matter to me a lot is because I've had a lot of gynecology issues, which have included 2 surgeries, and they've left scarring, and I actually can't have children, or at least it's very unlikely I would be able to hold a full pregnancy. So my pets are literally my babies. And my mum actually commented the other day, she said, if these are my grandchildren, I'm happy and satisfied. So, that's a sense of purpose, is to feel like I'm a mum and that I'm responsible. Non-verbal emotional connection. Don't always agree non-verbal because I talk to my pets as if they were people, and I honestly feel like I get a lot more sense out of them than I do some people in my life. Stability and routine. This speaks into I'm seeing chats at the minute. This speaks to something that's a huge motivation for me to stay safe with my mental health, is the notion of responsibility, the routine of knowing that if I wasn't here, how would my pets cope? They're all very attached to me. I have a cat. I still have the eldest rabbit, Luna, and then I also have a new bunny called Tilly. And they're very sort of, they always want to know where I am and stuff. So I think it would be incredibly hard if anything ever happened to me. And that served as a massive motivation to stay safe and to stay out of hospital. Social connector, I think, is quite true with dogs, in terms of people taking their dogs for a walk and being able to connect with other dog walkers or people passing by who think their dog's really cute and wants to ask questions. And symbolic and emotional meaning really speaks to sort of what I said about being a mum. Next slide. So the reason why I feel this should matter to Waythrough and staff of Waythrough yourselves, there was a pet loss survey done by the RSPCA. I should have credited them for this, but these were statistics that came from that, and they're the statistics that I feel are more fundamental and monumental for mental health or addictions staff. So 32.6% of adults in the UK have experienced pet loss. There's actually another huge statistic for children who have experienced it. 60% describe their pet as family. 21 say it was more distressing to lose their pet than losing a human. 67% was surprised by the intensity of their grief, and that's something I went through with losing Gracie. I wasn't expecting it to hit me so hard, and I struggled quite a bit because I had lost pets before her. I'd lost 3 pets before her, and I sort of hadn't experienced the sense of trauma and it really get into my mental health until sort of what happened with Gracie. So that's one reason I was very surprised with how hard it hit me. 93% felt heartbroken, 60% felt guilty, which mainly corresponds with euthanasia decisions, and feeling as though you can't find the right time to have an animal put to sleep, struggling, thinking you could have done more for that animal. That's where the guilt comes in, and 50% of people experience symptoms of depression and or anxiety. Next slide, please. So what can you all do? Acknowledge the loss, which then speaks to using the pet's name. Listen more than you speak. Let the bereaved owner be in control of the conversation. Let them sort of dictate. And I think using the pet's name could also take the lead from the bereaved owner in terms of whether they appreciate having the pet's name used or if it's triggering and upsetting for them to hear the name. Avoid cliches. So over the years with pet loss, I've received a lot of comments that I would label as a cliche, in sort of saying you can get another pet, or some people saying it was just a pet. And I think sometimes cliches can also include sort of trying to support somebody, but it's very obvious to a bereaved owner that you're saying something that's cliche and not necessarily intended and not necessarily supported by yourself. It's just sort of coming out as the cliche kind of saying. Validate the person's feelings. This is incredibly important, I feel. Validation is really key for me and my mental health. And a lot of bereaved owners are facing stigma and judgment from people who are saying, you know, that you're too upset for what's happened, like it was just a pet. And a difficult experience I had with the loss of my rabbit was a neighbour said she was going to heat the stove up and get the pot out. And then another neighbour commented on the price I'd paid for the vet fees and stuff and said that was a very expensive pie. So this speaks to the validation of feelings. I in that moment, I needed my neighbours to support me and to validate just how much I was struggling and how much Gracie had meant to me. And instead, I faced the exact opposite, and it just it really impacted my mental health. And I haven't spoken to my neighbours since those comments. Know when further support is needed. So on the Gracie's Way website, which is just www.graciesway.co.uk, there is a help directory, and there are 3 organisations and charities who are specifically have helplines for pet bereavement. So the British Horse Society has one. The Blue Cross have a pet loss helpline, and Cats Protection have a helpline called Pause for Grief. So if you felt like you were incapable or you were struggling to support somebody, I would absolutely recommend sort of signposting them to specialist services. And there is a resource on Gracie's Way for professionals that is regarding signposting and how to do it in a kind way, and to not look as if you're trying to just not have any responsibility or any connection with it, just sort of passing the buck. So there's a resource up there that provides advice for this part. Next slide. Helpful language. So again, use the pet's name whenever possible, and that last one, follow the bereaved person's lead, is what I've talked about earlier, and that connects to the pet's name. Acknowledge the significance of the relationship. I think, you know, that's really important, and it sort of speaks to the validation as well, and just recognizing how important a pet could mean to somebody. And I recognize that some people have actually never owned a pet, and that makes it harder for them to empathize. But I would just say, you know, if you felt that you were in that position, to look at the resources on Gracie's Way and to gain some sort of empathy and some sort of way that you can acknowledge the significance of the relationship. Listen more than you speak again. Validate emotions without trying to fix them. So be very aware that some bereaved owners do well by voicing their emotions, but often they're not voicing them for you to do something about it and to fix them and to say, you shouldn't feel like this and don't feel like this. It's important to let the person just feel those emotions and not have them sort of pushed down. Follow a brief person. Right, next slide, please. So this is a list of the resources. For bereaved owners, the creative writing workbook, remembrance exercises. I tried to provide resources that would help different people in different ways. So some people might find creative writing, like I do, really helpful and really therapeutic. Other people might want more of the wellbeing activity guide. So I felt it was really important that Gracie's Way recognises that everybody can cope differently and everybody can need different skills in order to cope. The Pet Bereavement Action Plan was created. I designed all these resources. The Pet Bereavement Action Plan is actually based on the Wellness Recovery and Action Plan in mental health called WRAP. It's incredibly sort of, the action plan is quite similar, like that sort of end bit of action plan is quite similar to WRAP in picking out like early warning signs that somebody's struggling, to sort of recognise when to get help a lot sooner if they see their early warning signs. And then the pet bereavement side of it is really about a little introduction to your pets and how much they're meant, and then the bereavement speaks to how a person's feeling and what they do about those feelings. So something that I have said for professionals as a professional's guide to the Pet Bereavement Action Plan, because I would recommend only using the action plan when you're supporting somebody long term, because it is a document you need to sort of work through on sessions. Also for professionals, there's the grief communication guide, pet grief info pack, and then the next one is the one I mentioned about the risk factors and signposting resource, and trauma-informed care guidance. Trauma-informed care is something I massively appreciate and I very much support, because I've had admissions to psychiatric hospitals where it's actually sort of influenced more trauma, or they've done something that's triggered memories of a previous trauma. So I think it's really important that you stay informed with that. Next slide, please. So this is the pet bereavement training that Gracie's Way can offer. It typically would be a full day or 2 half days. Prices are up for discussion, really. And I've tried to sort of include things that are a bit different to what's in the resources as well in the training. So there is an element of learning things in the training that you might not have seen in the resources, which I think speaks to it being more important. There's also a workbook which includes trigger warnings and helplines in case you struggle. There's a page about responsibility in terms of how responsible the organisation are in you doing the training, and how responsible I am for avoiding triggering language. And obviously it says there is a trigger warning. And I think why train with Gracie's Way, I think a huge sort of supporting factor of the training is that it's facilitated by myself, who has that personal experience of pet bereavement. I also have career experience of training with, I once collaborated with my NHS Mental Health Trust to train Northumbria Police new recruits in mental health. And off the back of that, I grew a lot of confidence, and I facilitated suicide awareness training for the British Transport Police by myself. I've also ran workshops on blogging. So I have a lot of experience with training, so it's not that I've come into this and I'm having to sort of learn as I go. Next slide, please. I think I'm nearly... Okay, I think this is one of the last. What can you do now? So hopefully you're feeling a bit more confident. I'll ask in a minute if people could put the numbers in. There is, whilst Waythrough aren't sort of officially endorsing the project yet, they are very supportive of it, especially the comms and marketing team. And I think I saw somebody from comms and marketing here now. So they've been very supportive of it. So it's absolutely fine if you want to signpost service users to the resources of Gracie's Way. Please consider requesting the resources for yourself as well. And as I said, they're completely free PDFs. So mention Gracie's Way online and or share the website and Instagram content. Thanks, Dave. He's put the links there. I actually decided to just have Instagram for Gracie's Way because I thought I would struggle managing my blog and my own social media. But it turns out, even though I thought that through, I've actually had a massive workload now, and we've just recruited 2 volunteers, and I have 2 more applicants to interview. So there's going to be a little team behind me now. We've also got a training and education coordinator coming in who's going to help with the training and ensuring that it's the best it can be. So perhaps if you did have service users who might be interested in volunteering, you can apply through reachvolunteering.org. And it's a very simple sort of application process. And I just think if you've got service users that are well enough to help and to volunteer some time, that could be something you could be mentioning to them and supporting them to apply.